I was in complete shock when Ben looked at me and said, "Fine. I'll be your fake boyfriend." This was the same guy who tortured me every single day at school, and now I was asking him for help to make my ex jealous. Stupid? Absolutely. Desperate? Definitely. Sitting in the cafeteria, I could feel my hands shaking as I watched Alex, my ex, looking happy at the corner table with his new boyfriend. He dumped me 3 months ago and now I wanted him back. Pathetic, I know. Are you serious? Ben stared at me with those piercing blue eyes of his. His voice was cold, just like always. You think I'm going to help you? Look, I know we're enemies, I whispered, but this is mutually beneficial. You need to get away from someone too, right? Sarah's been chasing you for weeks. Ben's jaw tightened. Sarah was definitely a problem for him. The girl wouldn't take no for an answer. I could see he was considering it. The whole thing had started this morning when I'd overheard Sarah cornering Ben by his locker, practically throwing herself at him while he looked like he wanted to disappear. That's when the crazy idea hit me. We both had people we wanted to avoid. Why not help each other? But asking Ben Mitchell for anything felt like making a deal with the devil himself. 1 month, he said finally. Fake dates, couple acts, whatever. But don't expect me to be nice to you when nobody's watching. My heart hammered against my chest. Deal. And Martin. Ben leaned closer and his scent hit me. Something like pine trees in danger. If you develop any stupid feelings, I'll destroy you. I rolled my eyes, trying to hide how his closeness was affecting me. Trust me, Ben. Feelings for you? Never happening. He smirked with that same arrogant expression that had made me want to punch him since freshman year. Good. We'll meet at lunch tomorrow. Make it convincing. As he walked away, I realized what I'd just done. Ben Mitchell, the guy who had made my life hell for 2 years, was now going to pretend to love me. The same guy who threw my books in the hallways, who made sarcastic comments about my art projects, who somehow looked annoyingly perfect even when being a complete jerk. I looked back at Alex. He was laughing at something his boyfriend said, completely unaware of my master plan. Alex had been my first real relationship. My first everything. When he told me he needed space to figure things out, I'd been devastated. Then 2 weeks later, he was dating someone else. The betrayal still burned. This is gonna work, I told myself. It has to. But deep down, something felt wrong. Ben's warning echoed in my head, and for the first time, I wondered if maybe I wasn't the one who should be worried about catching feelings. The rest of the day dragged on. In English class, I couldn't concentrate on Shakespeare. Mrs. Rodriguez was discussing Romeo and Juliet's fake death plan, and all I could think about was my own fake relationship plan. The irony wasn't lost on me. During art class, my favorite period, I found myself sketching angry blue eyes instead of the still life we were supposed to be drawing. I quickly erased them before anyone could see. "Everything okay, Martin?" asked Jake, my best friend since middle school, sliding into the seat next to me. "Yeah, just tired," I lied. Jake studied my face. He had this annoying ability to read me like an open book. "This is about Alex, isn't it? Dude, you need to move on." If only he knew what I was planning. After school, I sat in my car in the parking lot, watching Ben walk to his motorcycle. He moved with this confident swagger that irritated me to no end. His dark hair was perfectly messy, his leather jacket fitting him like it was custom made. No wonder girls like Sarah threw themselves at him. But Ben had never dated anyone seriously that I knew of. He'd hook up with girls at parties, but never anything lasting. Maybe he was just as commitment-phobic as he seemed. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Hey, saw you in the cafeteria today. You seemed upset. Everything okay?" My heart skipped. He'd noticed me. He cared enough to text. This was exactly why I needed this plan to work. I typed back, "I'm good. Just dealing with some stuff. If you need to talk, I'm here." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times, like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. Finally, "I miss our friendship, Mart." Friendship. The word stung, but it was something. A crack in the door I could work with. That night at dinner, my mom asked about school while my dad scrolled through his phone, half listening. "Anything interesting happened today?" she asked, passing me the mashed potatoes. "Not really," I said, though my mind was racing with thoughts of tomorrow's performance. "How's Alex doing?" I haven't seen him around lately. My stomach twisted. My parents had loved Alex. He was polite, charming, and helped with yard work whenever he came over. They'd been almost as devastated as I was when we broke up, though they tried to hide it. He's fine. Dating someone new. Mom's face softened with sympathy. I'm sorry, honey. I know that must be hard. If she only knew I was planning to fake date my enemy to win him back, she'd probably ground me for life. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and wondered what I'd gotten myself into. Ben Mitchell was unpredictable, sharp-tongued, and had a reputation for being ruthless when crossed. In sophomore year, when Tyler Martinez had spread rumors about Ben's family, Ben had systematically destroyed Tyler's social life until he transferred schools. But I was desperate. Alex's text had given me hope, and I was willing to do whatever it took to get him back. Even if it meant spending a month pretending to be in love with someone I couldn't stand. My last thought before falling asleep was wondering what Ben's real motivations were. Sure, getting Sarah off his back was part of it, but something in his eyes when he'd agreed told me there was more to it. Ben Mitchell never did anything without multiple angles, and I had the sinking feeling I was missing something important. Tomorrow the performance would begin. I just hoped I was ready for whatever Ben had planned, because knowing him, this was going to be anything but simple. The alarm on my phone was set for an hour earlier than usual. If I was going to be Ben Mitchell's fake boyfriend, I needed to look the part. This plan had to work. It was my only shot at getting my life back on track, at proving to Alex and maybe to myself that I was worth fighting for. Put your arm around me, Ben whispered as we walked into school together. His voice was commanding, but I could feel the tension in his shoulders. I hesitated for a second, then slipped my arm around his waist. He was warm, and surprisingly, he didn't pull away. In fact, he pulled me closer, his hand settling on my hip like we'd done this 1,000 times before. Smile, Martin. You're supposed to be happy, he muttered under his breath. But his own face had transformed into this soft expression I'd never seen before. It was almost tender, completely different from his usual cold smirk. Students were staring. Whispers followed us down the hallway like a wave. I could see the shock on everyone's faces. Martin Cooper and Ben Mitchell, together? The same guys who had gotten detention twice for arguing in Mr. Peterson's history class. Holy shit, I heard someone say behind us. Are they actually dating? When did this happen? Another voice whispered. I thought they hated each other. Ben's hand found mine, intertwining our fingers with surprising gentleness. His palm was slightly sweaty, which made me realize that maybe he was nervous too. The thought was oddly comforting. Alex is watching, he said quietly. 10 o'clock. I glanced over and saw Alex's mouth literally hanging open, his new boyfriend looking confused beside him. Perfect. This was exactly the reaction I'd been hoping for. During first period chemistry, word had already spread. I could feel eyes on me from every direction. Emma Rodriguez, who sat behind me, leaned forward and whispered, "Since when are you and Ben Mitchell a thing?" "It's new," I said simply, not trusting myself to elaborate without giving something away. "But you guys fight all the time." "Sometimes fighting is just unresolved tension," I replied, surprising myself with how smoothly the lie came out. When the bell rang for lunch, my stomach was in knots. This was the real test. Ben was waiting for me outside the cafeteria, leaning against the wall with that casual confidence that seemed to come naturally to him. "Ready for Act 2?" he asked, pushing off the wall. "As ready as I'll ever be." Instead of sitting across from me at our usual spots when we were forced to share a table during group projects, Ben sat right next to me. His leg pressed against mine under the table, and I tried to ignore how my stomach did this weird flip thing. "You're actually good at this," I admitted quietly while he fed me a bite of his sandwich. It was such a boyfriend thing to do, something Alex used to do, but somehow with Ben it felt different, more natural. "I'm good at everything," he replied with that cocky smile I knew so well. But there was something different in his eyes today. Softer, almost vulnerable. "Ben, can we talk?" Sarah appeared at our table, her face desperate and slightly angry. She was wearing a low-cut top and had clearly done her makeup with extra care. The girl didn't give up easily. "I'm busy," Ben said without even looking at her. Instead, he brushed a strand of hair from my face. The gesture was so gentle, so intimate, that for a moment I completely forgot we were pretending. But Ben, we need to discuss. He said he's busy. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. They sounded protective, possessive. What the hell was wrong with me? Sarah looked between us, hurt and confused, then walked away with her shoulders slumped. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Thanks, Ben said, and his voice was different. Genuine. Not the cold tone he usually used with me. It's part of the deal, I replied quickly. But we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Something about seeing Sarah trying to manipulate him had genuinely annoyed me. The rest of lunch was weird in the best possible way. We talked about normal things, movies we'd seen, music we liked, our shared hatred of Mr. Peterson's pop quizzes. We weren't fighting. We weren't insulting each other, we were just talking. And it felt good. Too good. I didn't know you liked horror movies, Ben said when I mentioned watching The Conjuring the night before. There's a lot you don't know about me, I replied. Apparently. He studied my face like he was seeing me for the first time. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone more. He paused, searching for the word. Shallow, I guess. You always seemed so focused on being perfect, being liked by everyone. The comment stung because it hit close to home. Maybe that's because you never bothered to actually know me. Fair point. Ben's voice was quiet. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about the books thing. And the art comments. I was being a dick. I stared at him in shock. Ben Mitchell was apologizing. To me? Why? Why was I being a dick, or why am I apologizing? Both. He was quiet for a long moment, playing with the wrapper from his sandwich. The dick part is complicated. The apology part is because spending time with you like this, it's making me realize I misjudged you. Before I could process that admission fully, Jake appeared at our table with his lunch tray, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Okay, what the actual hell is happening here? Jake demanded, setting his tray down with more force than necessary. Are you two seriously dating, or is this some elaborate prank? We're dating, Ben said smoothly, his arms sliding around my shoulders. Problem with that? Jake looked between us, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally resignation. No problem. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. Yesterday you guys couldn't be in the same room without arguing. Sometimes hate and attraction are closer than you think, Ben replied, and something in his tone made my heart skip. This is working better than I expected, I said to Ben as we walked to our next class. Jake trailing behind us, still muttering about the universe making no sense. Ben stopped walking, turning to look at me with an expression I couldn't read. Yeah, he said quietly. Maybe too well. Something in his tone made my chest feel tight. This was supposed to be fake, right? So why did that moment feel like the most real thing I'd experienced in months? In AP English, Mrs. Rodriguez was discussing the theme of deception in Othello, and I couldn't help but think about my own deception. But was it really deception when the lines were starting to blur? Martin? Mrs. Rodriguez's voice cut through my thoughts. Would you like to share your thoughts on Iago's motivations? Iago deceives others because he's deceiving himself, I said without thinking. He convinces himself that his manipulations are justified. But really he's just afraid of being vulnerable. Ben, who was in the same class, turned to look at me with raised eyebrows. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded approvingly, but I could feel heat creeping up my neck. Had I just psychoanalyzed myself in front of the entire class? After class, Ben caught up with me in the hallway. That was either really insightful or really revealing, he said. Probably both, I admitted. Martin, he said, my name softly, stopping me with a hand on my arm. This thing we're doing, we need to be careful. Careful of what? But before he could answer, Alex appeared beside us and Ben's hand immediately found mine again. Hey guys, Alex said, his voice carefully casual. How long has this been going on? A few weeks, Ben lied smoothly. We've been keeping it quiet. Alex nodded, but I could see something working behind his eyes. Jealousy? Regret? I couldn't tell. Well, Alex said finally, I'm happy for you both. But he didn't look happy. He looked confused and maybe a little lost. As he walked away, I realized that for the first time since our breakup, I wasn't entirely sure I wanted him to look back. I was waiting for Ben in the parking lot when it started pouring. School had ended 30 minutes ago, but he'd said he needed to grab something from his locker. typical, making me wait in the rain while he took his sweet time. The October sky had been threatening rain all day, heavy gray clouds that matched my increasingly complicated mood. The past week of fake dating had been confusing. Every day, Ben and I fell a little more into the rhythm of being a couple. Every day, it felt a little less fake. When Ben finally appeared, running through the downpour, something in my chest loosened. He looked almost cute. His usually perfect dark hair was soaked and sticking to his forehead, that carefully maintained appearance completely ruined by the weather. "Sorry," he said, slightly breathless, as he reached the small roof overhang where I was sheltering. "Coach wanted to talk about next week's game strategy. Apparently, our defensive line needs work." We stood under the narrow overhang, both dripping wet. The parking lot was nearly empty except for a few cars belonging to students in after-school activities. It was quiet, private, dangerous. "Your shirt is completely see-through," I pointed out, trying not to stare at the way the wet fabric clung to his chest. Ben had always been athletic, basketball and track, but I'd never really let myself notice how that translated to his body. Now I was noticing. "A lot." "Yours too," he replied, but his voice was different. Husky. Lower than usual. We should have run to our cars. Should have said goodbye and gone home to dry off and pretend this awkward moment never happened. Instead, we just stood there, looking at each other like we'd never really seen each other before. The rain was coming down harder now, creating a curtain of water around our small shelter. It felt like we were in our own private world, cut off from everything else. "Martin." Ben said my name softly, and something about the way it sounded on his lips made my heart stutter. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on what it is." "Why did you really ask me to do this? And don't say it's just about Alex." The question caught me completely off guard. I could have lied, should have stuck to the story about making Alex jealous. But something about the way Ben was looking at me, vulnerable, open, like he was seeing past all my defenses, made honesty spill out of me before I could stop it. I was tired of feeling invisible. I admitted, my voice barely audible over the rain. "Alex made me feel like I mattered, like I was special, and then he just threw me away. Like I was nothing. I guess I wanted to prove that I could be wanted by someone else, even if it was fake." Ben stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body despite our wet clothes. "It doesn't feel fake anymore." My breathing stopped entirely. "Ben, I know we're supposed to hate each other," he continued, his blue eyes intense and focused entirely on me. "I know this is all supposed to be pretend, but when you defended me against Sarah yesterday, when you laugh at my stupid jokes, when you look at me like..." He stopped himself, running a hand through his wet hair. "Like what? Like I'm not the asshole everyone thinks I am." The rain was getting louder, drumming against the roof above us, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. "Maybe you're not." His hand reached up slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. When I didn't, his thumb brushed across my cheekbone, wiping away a drop of rain. The touch was so gentle it made my breath catch. "This is so fucked up," he whispered, but he didn't move his hand away. "Yeah," I breathed. "It is." But neither of us pulled away. Instead, Ben leaned closer, his forehead almost touching mine. I could smell his cologne mixed with rain and something that was just him. My eyes fluttered closed without my permission. "Martin," he said my name like a question, like he was asking for permission for something we both knew would change everything. "Yeah?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. A car horn honked loudly, cutting through the moment like a knife. We jumped apart like we'd been burned, both breathing hard. A senior in a red Honda was trying to leave the parking lot and was waiting for us to move out of the way of the exit. "I should go," Ben said quickly, avoiding my eyes and grabbing his backpack. "Yeah, me too." But neither of us moved immediately. We stood there in the awkward aftermath, both knowing that something had almost happened, something that would have complicated our fake relationship in ways we weren't prepared to deal with. "Ben," I started, not sure what I wanted to say. "Tomorrow," he said, finally looking at me. "We'll figure this out tomorrow." Then he was running through the rain to his motorcycle, leaving me standing under the overhang feeling like I'd been hit by lightning. I watched him drive away, his bike disappearing into the gray afternoon, and realized that everything had changed. This wasn't about Alex anymore. This wasn't about making anyone jealous or proving anything to myself. This was about Ben Mitchell, the boy I was supposed to hate. The boy who made sarcastic comments and threw my books in hallways. The boy who somehow looked at me like I was worth something. The boy I was falling for despite every rational thought in my head screaming that it was a terrible idea. As I finally ran to my own car, getting completely soaked in the process, I thought about the past week, all the small moments that had felt too real. The way Ben remembered that I liked my coffee with extra sugar, how he'd automatically handed me his jacket when I shivered during lunch outside. The protective way he'd positioned himself between me and some drunk senior at Friday's football game. None of that had been for show. There had been no audience, no Alex to make jealous. It had just been us, being us, whatever that meant. Sitting in my car with the heater blasting, trying to warm up and dry off, I pulled out my phone. I had 3 messages from Alex asking if I wanted to hang out this weekend, to catch up and talk. A week ago, those messages would have made me ecstatic. They were exactly what I'd been hoping for. Now they just made me feel guilty. I stared at the messages for a long time before finally typing back, maybe another time. I have plans with Ben. It wasn't a lie. We did have plans. We were supposed to go to some party together on Saturday, continue our charade. But as I sent the message, I realized that I was looking forward to those plans for entirely different reasons than I had been a week ago. My phone buzzed with Ben's name on the screen. "Are you okay?" That got intense. I stared at the message for several minutes before typing back, "I'm okay. Are you?" His response came immediately, "No. But maybe that's not a bad thing." I smiled despite everything, despite the confusion and the fear and the way my heart was racing. Maybe he was right. Maybe being okay was overrated. Maybe sometimes the best things happened when you stopped trying to be safe and started taking risks. Even if those risks involved falling for someone who was supposed to be your enemy. "You two are actually cute together," Alex said, cornering me by my locker the next morning. I never saw this coming. My plan was working perfectly. So why did I feel sick to my stomach? "Yeah, well," I tried to sound casual while fumbling with my combination lock. Sometimes the best relationships come from unexpected places. Alex leaned against the adjacent locker, studying my face with those green eyes that used to make my heart race. Now they just made me nervous. But not in the way I'd expected. Not because I was excited, but because I felt like I was about to disappoint him somehow. "Are you happy, Martin?" "Really?" The question hit me like a physical blow because honestly, I was happier than I'd been in months. These past 2 weeks with Ben, fake or not, had been the best I'd felt since before our breakup. Even when we weren't performing for others. Even in the quiet moments between classes or walking to the parking lot, I felt comfortable, safe, like I could breathe properly for the first time in forever. I said. And as the words left my mouth, I realized they were completely true. Alex nodded slowly, something like relief crossing his features. "Good. You deserve that." He paused, running a hand through his perfectly styled blonde hair. "I was a shitty boyfriend, wasn't I?" "You were okay," I lied automatically. The same lie I'd been telling myself for months. "No, I wasn't." Alex's voice was quiet, sincere in a way I rarely heard from him. "I made you feel like you had to change yourself to keep me interested." "That's not love, Martin. That's control." His eyes met mine directly. "Ben doesn't do that, does he?" I thought about how Ben listened when I rambled about my art projects. How he remembered that I preferred coffee over energy drinks during late study sessions. How he never made me feel like I was too much or too little. How he'd started bringing me those weird cookies from the vending machine because he'd noticed I always got hungry during 5th period. "No," I whispered. "He doesn't." "I'm glad," Alex said, and the strange thing was, he actually seemed to mean it. "You deserve someone who sees you, Martin. All of you. Not just the parts they want to fix or improve." Then he walked away, leaving me standing there completely confused and more than a little shaken. This whole elaborate plan was supposed to win Alex back. But now that he was showing interest, acknowledging our problems, maybe even having regrets, I didn't feel victorious. I felt guilty and wrong, and like I was betraying someone important. During first period calculus, I couldn't concentrate on derivatives and limits. Mrs. Chen called on me twice, and both times I had to admit I hadn't been paying attention. Jake, who sat next to me, kept shooting me concerned looks. Dude, what's going on with you? He whispered during a group work session. You've been weird all week. Just tired, I mumbled. But Jake knew me too well to buy that excuse. This is about the Ben thing, isn't it? Are you guys actually dating, or is this some elaborate scheme I don't understand? I stared at him, wondering how transparent I was being. What makes you think it's a scheme? Because 2 weeks ago you were still moping about Alex. And now you're suddenly in love with someone you've hated since sophomore year? Come on, Martin. I'm not an idiot. Before I could formulate a response, Mrs. Chen announced that we needed to return to our seats. But Jake's words echoed in my head for the rest of the period. Was I that obvious? If Jake could see through us, who else could? During art class, I barely concentrated on the still life we were supposed to be sketching. Mrs. Peterson kept asking if I was okay, her concerned teacher voice making me feel even more guilty about lying to everyone. When Ben appeared at the classroom door during lunch, my heart did that stupid flutter thing it had been doing lately. The thing that definitely wasn't supposed to happen in a fake relationship. You look miserable, he said, sliding into the seat next to me in the empty art room. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows caught the blue in his eyes, making them look almost electric. Alex talked to me today. Ben's expression immediately closed off, his relaxed posture becoming tense. And he asked if I was happy, said he was a bad boyfriend, basically opened the door for getting back together. Isn't that what you wanted? Ben's voice was carefully neutral, but I could hear the edge underneath. Your master plan working exactly as intended? I thought it was. I looked down at the painting I'd been working on for the past week somehow. Without consciously realizing it, I'd painted a pair of blue eyes that looked suspiciously like Ben's. But when he said it, all I could think about was how I didn't want this to end. Ben was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the art table. This fake relationship? This, I gestured between us, my hand shaking slightly. Whatever this is, real or fake, I don't want it to end. The admission hung in the air between us like a confession. Ben's hand slowly moved across the table until it covered mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that had become natural over the past 2 weeks. It's real for me, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Has been for a while. Me too. We sat there in the quiet art room, surrounded by half-finished paintings and the smell of acrylic paint, holding hands and finally admitting what we'd both been feeling. The afternoon light was golden, making everything feel dreamlike and surreal. So what do we do now? I asked. I don't know, Ben admitted. I've never been in a fake relationship that turned real before. I laughed, and it felt good to laugh with him. Not the performative laughter we'd been doing for audiences, but real, genuine amusement. I don't think there's a handbook for this situation. Probably not. Ben's thumb traced over my knuckles, sending little electric shocks up my arm. But maybe we can figure it out as we go. What about Alex? What about him? He thinks we're together. Everyone thinks we're together. If we actually get together, doesn't that make us liars? Ben considered this. Or it makes us really good at method acting. This is insane, I said, but I was smiling. Yeah, Ben agreed. It is. But maybe insane isn't always bad. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, but neither of us moved immediately. We stayed there holding hands in the art room, looking at each other like we were seeing something new and wonderful and slightly terrifying. Ben? Yeah? When did you know? That it was real, I mean. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Yesterday, in the rain. When you looked at me like I was someone worth saving instead of someone worth fighting. My heart did that fluttering thing again, stronger this time. And when did you know? He asked. Just now, I admitted. When Alex was talking about deserving better, all I could think was that I already had better. I already had you. The plan had worked, just not the way I'd expected. I'd gotten what I wanted, just not what I thought I wanted. And maybe that was even better. You used me. Ben's voice was cold, angrier than I'd ever heard it. We were standing in the school parking lot after what had to be the worst day of my life, and I could see the hurt behind his fury. Sarah had cornered him after 6th period, gleefully informing him that she'd overheard me talking to Jake about the original plan. Of course she'd twisted it, made it sound like the manipulation was still ongoing. like everything between us had been a lie. Ben, let me explain. Explain what? He stepped back when I tried to reach for him. That this whole thing was just a game to get your ex back? That I was stupid enough to think you actually gave a shit about me? That's not, it started that way, but nothing, Martin. His blue eyes were furious, but underneath the anger I could see the hurt. The betrayal. It made my chest ache. You got what you wanted. Alex is interested again. Congratulations on your successful manipulation. I don't want Alex. The words exploded out of me, desperate and raw. I want you, you idiot. Ben laughed, but it was bitter and hollow. Right. Until the next time someone better comes along. Until you get bored with this little experiment. He turned to walk away, but I grabbed his arm, holding on even when he tried to pull free. You know me better than that, do I? Ben's voice cracked slightly. Because the Martin I thought I was dating for 3 weeks apparently doesn't exist. So tell me, which version is real? The one who asked me to fake date him or the one who claims to have feelings for me? That stopped me cold because he was right. I had been playing roles, being different versions of myself depending on what I thought people wanted. But with Ben, especially lately, I'd felt more like myself than I had in years. You want honesty, Martin? Fine. Ben's voice was raw, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard before. I started liking you sophomore year, but you were always chasing after guys like Alex. Pretty popular, uncomplicated. The kind of guys who didn't challenge you or make you think too hard. My world tilted. What? Every fight we had, every argument, I was just trying to get your attention. Pathetic, right? Ben's laugh was hollow, self-deprecating. I thought if I couldn't make you like me, at least I could make you notice me. At least you'd know I existed. I stared at him, pieces of the past 2 years suddenly clicking into place. The way he always seemed to be wherever I was. How our arguments, while heated, never felt truly malicious. The look in his eyes, during detention, that I'd always interpreted as annoyance, but now realized might have been something else entirely. Then you asked me for this favor, Ben continued, and I thought maybe finally I'd have a chance. Maybe you'd see me differently. But it was all fake for you, wasn't it? Just another role to play. It wasn't fake. It was at first, and that's enough. Ben pulled his arm free from my grip. We're done, Martin. For real this time. As he walked away toward his motorcycle, I stood there in shock. Rain starting to fall again, like the universe was determined to make every important moment between us happen in shitty weather. 2 years of fighting, of tension, of what I'd thought was mutual hatred, all because Ben had liked me, and I'd been too blind, too caught up in chasing the wrong people to see it. The ride home was a blur. I kept replaying the conversation, Ben's words echoing in my head. Every interaction we'd had suddenly looked different, through this new lens. The way he'd always known exactly how to push my buttons. How he'd remember little details about my life even while we were supposedly enemies. The protective way he'd stepped between me and some drunk seniors at last week's football game. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every moment from the past 3 weeks replayed in my head like a movie. I couldn't turn off. Ben's gentle touches when we were alone. The way he listened when I talked about my art. Really listened. Not just waiting for his turn to speak. How safe I felt with him. How natural everything had become. How he made me laugh even when I was trying to stay angry at him. It had been real for both of us. Maybe more real than any relationship I'd ever had. But I'd hurt him. Made him think he was just a tool to get someone else. When the truth was he'd become the person I wanted most. I picked up my phone a dozen times to text him. But what could I say? How do you apologize for breaking someone's heart with your own stupidity? Around 2 a.m. I finally gave up on sleep and went to my easel. I'd always processed emotions better through art. And right now I was drowning in them. I painted until sunrise, creating something abstract and chaotic and full of blue. The same blue as Ben's eyes. The blue I'd apparently been unconsciously painting for weeks. By the time I got ready for school, I'd made a decision. I had to fix this. Had to prove that what we had was worth fighting for. Because losing Ben, really losing him, felt like losing the best part of myself. But how do you convince someone to trust you again when you've already betrayed that trust? How do you prove that your feelings are real when you've built them on a foundation of lies? During first period, I watched Ben from across the classroom. He looked tired. like he hadn't slept either. When our eyes accidentally met, he immediately looked away, but not before I saw the hurt still there. Jake cornered me at my locker between classes. Okay, what the hell happened? Ben looks like someone killed his dog and you look like you haven't slept in a week. I screwed up, I said simply. How bad? Bad enough that he probably never wants to see me again. Jake was quiet for a moment. But you actually like him now, don't you? This isn't about Alex anymore. No, I said, surprised by how certain I sounded. It was never really about Alex. I just didn't realize it until it was too late. So fix it. How? Grand gesture, Jake said immediately. Public declaration. Something big enough that he knows you're serious. I stared at him. You want me to make a fool of myself in front of the entire school? If that's what it takes? Yeah. Jake shrugged. Besides, you've already made a fool of yourself. Might as well make it count for something. The idea was terrifying. I'd never been good at public displays, preferring to keep my emotions private. But Ben was worth the embarrassment. Ben was worth everything. Tomorrow I was going to fight for him. Even if it meant swallowing my pride and making a complete fool of myself in front of the whole school. Even if it meant risking rejection in the most public way possible. Because some things were worth the risk. Some people were worth fighting for. And Ben Mitchell was definitely worth both. I never thought I'd be the guy to make a public declaration of love. But here I was, standing in the middle of the cafeteria with a microphone I'd borrowed from the drama club. My hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Excuse me, I said, my voice cracking slightly. The feedback from the speaker made everyone wince, but it got their attention. The entire cafeteria went quiet. Hundreds of eyes turning toward me like I was either about to perform a miracle or have a complete mental breakdown. Maybe both. I found Ben at his usual table near the windows, his face cycling through shock, horror, and something that might have been panic. His friends were staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Which, to be fair, I probably had. I need to say something to someone who probably doesn't want to hear from me right now. Ben started to stand, probably planning to escape before I could embarrass both of us further. But his friends grabbed his arms and pulled him back down. Good. He needed to hear this, even if it killed me to say it. 3 weeks ago, I began. My voice stronger now. I asked Ben Mitchell to fake date me. Not because I liked him, I thought I hated him. I wanted to make my ex jealous. And Ben seemed like the perfect solution. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like waves. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably already posting about this on social media. By tomorrow, this would be all over the internet. But I didn't care anymore. It was selfish and stupid, and Ben had every right to say no. But he didn't. I could see Ben's face clearly now. He looked mortified but wasn't leaving, which I took as a good sign. His blue eyes were locked on mine, unreadable but intense. For 3 weeks, Ben pretended to care about me, pretended to listen when I talked about art, pretended to laugh at my terrible jokes, pretended to hold my hand like it meant something. My voice cracked slightly, emotion threatening to overwhelm me. Except somewhere along the way, I realized he wasn't pretending. And neither was I. The cafeteria was dead silent now. Even the lunch staff had stopped working to listen. I could see Mrs. Rodriguez, the principal, standing in the doorway looking like she wasn't sure whether to stop this or let it continue. Ben, I said, addressing him directly now, I know you think this whole thing was fake for me, but falling for you was the realest thing I've ever experienced. I took a shaky breath, trying to gather the courage for what came next. You make me feel seen, valued, protected. You remember that I hate pickles on my sandwiches and that I get nervous before art presentations. You know that I bite my lip when I'm concentrating and that I always forget to eat when I'm working on a painting. A few people in the crowd made soft ah sounds, but I barely heard them. All my attention was focused on Ben, on the way his expression was slowly shifting from shock to something softer. You've never tried to change me or make me into someone else. When I was with Alex, I felt like I was constantly performing, trying to be the person he wanted. But with you, I could just be me. Even when we were supposedly pretending, I felt more like myself than I had in years. I could feel tears threatening, but I pushed through. I was an idiot for not seeing that you liked me before all this started. I was an even bigger idiot for not realizing that what I felt for you was so much deeper than anything I ever felt for Alex. Ben's eyes were wide now, all his defenses down. I could see the exact moment when he stopped being angry and started hoping. Every fight we had, every argument, you were just trying to get my attention, weren't you? And I was too stupid and too focused on the wrong people to realize that the person I actually belonged with was right in front of me. The cafeteria was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I love you, Ben Mitchell. Not fake love, not convenient love. Real terrifying. I can't imagine my life without you, love. Someone in the crowd gasped. I think it might have been Sarah, but I didn't look to check. And if you'll give me another chance, I promise I'll spend every day proving that you're not my second choice or my backup plan. You're my first choice, my only choice. You're the person I want to fight with and make up with and grow old with. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Ben was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might actually reject me in front of everyone. Then he stood up slowly, pushing back his chair with deliberate precision. The cafeteria held its collective breath as he walked across the room, his eyes never leaving mine. When he stopped right in front of me, so close I could smell his cologne, I realized I was holding my breath too. You're an idiot, Martin Cooper, he said softly, but loud enough for the microphone to pick up. My heart sank. I know, but you're my idiot, he smiled then. That real smile I'd fallen for. The one that transformed his entire face and made my chest feel tight with emotion. And I love you too. The cafeteria erupted. Cheers, applause, someone whistling loudly from the back. But all I could focus on was Ben stepping even closer, his hands coming up to frame my face with gentle precision. You realize you just declared your love for me in front of the entire school, he said, his voice warm with amusement. Yeah. I breathed. I noticed. That's either the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for me, or the most embarrassing, probably both. Definitely both. His thumbs brushed across my cheekbones, wiping away tears I didn't realize had fallen. But I'll take it. When he kissed me, the entire cafeteria went wild. People were cheering and clapping and probably taking a million pictures, but I didn't care. All I cared about was the way Ben's lips felt against mine. Soft and warm and perfect. The way he pulled me closer like he never wanted to let me go. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the noise in the cafeteria was deafening. Ben laughed, a sound of pure joy that made my heart soar. So, he said, his forehead resting against mine, are we officially dating now? For real this time? If you'll have me. Martin Cooper, Ben said, his voice serious despite the chaos around us. I've been waiting for you to figure this out for 2 years. Of course I'll have you. I kissed him again, shorter this time but no less meaningful. When we pulled apart, I noticed that Alex was standing near the exit, watching us with a small smile on his face. When our eyes met, he gave me a thumbs up and mouthed, "Good for you," before disappearing into the hallway. Come on, Ben said, taking my hand and leading me toward the exit as the crowd slowly began to disperse. Let's get out of here before someone asks us to do an encore. As we walked out of the cafeteria together, hand in hand, I realized that my plan had worked perfectly. I just hadn't understood what the plan actually was. Until now, we were finally real, and it was even better than I'd imagined.